I'm going to tell you about a fantastic opportunity that I had, which was to do some collaborative work with the Association of the Indonesian Midwives, a group of educators in Indonesia, and this was a collaborative development of a BSc midwifery program, which was going to be implemented in Indonesia. And it was a real opportunity to sort of demonstrate how, as educators, we can be involved in international consultancy and looking at collaboration and partnerships with global educators, really, which really goes to improve sort of midwifery education across the world. So this was part of an initiative that we were working on, and I was very, very honoured to be involved in. So I'll just give you a little bit of background about it then. So started probably back in about 2017, and this was before I was involved in this, but we first, our team had a visit first of all to Indonesia, and that was to discuss the potential for a future collaboration with the Association of the Indonesian Midwifery Educators, and their title is written there in Indonesian for you, but it was abbreviated to APKIND, and this was in order to develop a professional midwifery BSc degree program, which could be implemented across Indonesia. So the initial team from our team who went out to Indonesia, that was Professor Helen Spivey, it was Dr. Kim Russell, it was Associate Professor Louise Walker, and another member of the School of Health Sciences, and they went out to Indonesia just to do some sort of exploration about the potential whereby we could get involved in collaborating with them to write a degree program for them. So that happened sort of back initially in 2017. And then in 2018, by which time Kim Russell then had actually written the program, and she had written a 5-year degree program, which then would be implemented in Indonesia. I was given the opportunity then to accompany Kim back to Indonesia to facilitate a series of workshops, which were to midwifery educators from all across Indonesia in association with APKIND. And, you know, this consisted first of all of like 3 days of workshops in Jakarta, and then we flew down to Surabaya, and, you know, there were further discussions about sort of regarding maybe a potential master's program as well. And then after that, I was again very, very lucky to be given the opportunity to go back the following year, this time with another colleague of mine, Dr. Maria Pearson. And again, by which time now, as I say, the programme had been written, and we went back out in June 2019. And this programme then was going to be started to be implemented in universities across Indonesia in September of that same year. So the idea was then that we were going out to facilitate workshops to the midwifery educators to prepare them how to deliver the first year of their degree programme. So just to give you a little bit of background really about Indonesia then. So I've got a map of Indonesia here, and you can, you know, Indonesia is made up of sort of thousands and thousands of islands. There are over 6,000 inhabited islands, and the main islands really are those of sort of Sumatra, Java, Borneo, and New Guinea. So we were based in Java, so you know, our sort of conferences, etc., were held in Jakarta. And as I say there, you can see that we also travelled down to the bottom of Java there and also visited Airlangga University in Surabaya. To put some context from Indonesia to the UK, so the Indonesian population is around about sort of 257.5 million people, compared to the UK population of about sort of 65.5 million people. There are approximately 325,000 midwives practicing in Indonesia, compared to a UK population of about 30,000 midwives. However, putting it further into context, the maternal mortality rate in Indonesia is around about 126 per 100,000 live births, and that is compared to a UK maternal mortality rate of around 8 women per 100,000 live births. So there was a real drive, I think, by the Indonesian government also to sort of improve midwifery education so that they could improve outcomes also for women and their babies across Indonesia. And currently midwives then could obtain a registration by completing either a 3-year degree diploma in midwifery or a 5-year professional midwifery programme. And the Indonesian government supported around about 850 public and private institutions that were offering midwifery education across Indonesia. So what was the professional midwifery degree then? So the programme was a 5-year programme, and it consisted then of 4 years theory, and there were 4 modules per year. So there were 3 theory modules and then also a clinical skills module as well. And during that year then the students also had opportunity to undertake some insight visits into sort of the clinical settings, where they could sort of accrue around about sort of 200 hours of sort of clinical teaching experience. And then their final year is a internship year. So they spend the whole year then in hospital sort of consolidating that sort of theory to practice in preparation for qualifying. So the first time we went out then, as I say, the programme had been written, but we were going out really just to sort of facilitate some workshops, really, just to give a practical guide to midwifery educators and to help them sort of think about how they could develop sort of theory modules then. So we had around about sort of 200 midwifery educators who joined us in Jakarta. And we hosted over the course of 3 days a series then of different workshops, and these included teaching them about sort of module leadership, how they could plan a module, a theory module, the sort of content that they needed to sort of think about to put in that module, how to timetable, how to think about assessments as well. So traditionally in Indonesia, the students really sort of only did exams. Okay, so a whole new concept really in our program was that to introduce them to different ways of assessment. So that included sort of OSCEs, which are sort of clinical examinations, and different types of assessment, essay writing, and also exams as well. So we were sort of introducing new concepts to them. The other thing that we were introducing to them was the concept of reflection. Now, as midwives, we reflect on a daily basis. We reflect all the time, and reflection is an integral part of our degree course at Nottingham. Our students sort of are continually sort of reflect on practice and provide evidence sort of in their practice of that reflection. And obviously, as practicing midwives as well, part of revalidation is all about being able to sort of reflect on your practice and to learn from your practice to improve your practice for the future. And a big part of the new Professional Midwifery Advocate role, again, is to do this sort of facilitated practice reflection as well, to adopt like a restorative approach. So reflection was a really, really new concept to the Indonesian educators. So we did a workshop about that as well. And as I say, there was the OSCEs as well, which we were teaching them to do. So a lot of what I've got on here is just some photographs really to show you, because they're much more interesting to look at sometimes, I think. So the first photograph we've got on the top left hand side, this was myself and Kim, and this was the sort of on our first day. We arrived sort of Saturday night, and on the Sunday afternoon then we had a briefing meeting, and the team that you can see behind us were the Apekind education team. So these are really sort of key people that have been involved with sort of implementing this midwifery program. The lady's just sat behind me here. This is Mrs. Jumayani, sort of well into her 70s, this lady. She's an incredibly inspiring woman and has a real drive to improve midwifery education. Yeah. And then we have Mrs. Yeti sat beside her. And then just sat here beside Kim was an educator called Deezer. And Deezer had done the master's program at the University of Nottingham. So that was one of the ways that we got involved in it, really, because she'd been to Nottingham and was inspired by the program that we offered. This was the hall itself. So, you know, we were in a hotel, and this was the sort of conference hall that we had with the delegates as well. And then this is some of the examples of the workshops. So what we did, we split everybody up into sort of groups, and then, you know, we came around and facilitated the workshops with them. And we also had one of the education team as well aligned to each of the groups as well, so they could help with, you know, stuff that sometimes might have got lost in translation, for instance, and just sort of help to facilitate the workshops. This one down here is all about sort of the OSCEs, and we were looking at sort of newborn life support. And then the picture in the middle is when we went down to Surabaya and we visited the university there. So this was some student midwives that we were lucky enough to meet. And then the final picture on this slide really is when we were when sort of Kim in particular was in discussions with the team at Surabaya about the master's programme. And one of the things of note here is that, you know, the three gentlemen that you can see on here are sort of three obstetricians, and they were running the midwifery programme. So, you know, quite different to what we have over in the UK, where our midwifery programme is run by midwifery educators, you know, and midwives. You know, it's a bit of a difference over there that it was run by obstetricians. So the second time we went out, then this was our sort of project team. So Kim had sort of worked actually on the program that we were going to do, and then myself and Maria went out. And as you can imagine, there was an incredible amount of work that involved before we went out, you know, to actually plan these sort of workshops and to plan the program and to sort of send it across to Indonesia before we came. So the idea was that we were going to be in lecturers with that knowledge and skills to be able to support the running of the first year of their programme. So we had 5 days this time in Jakarta. So day one was all about sort of learning how to look at modules, different modules, and how to plan those, how to timetable on day 2, how to plan teaching and different learning activities on day 3. Day 4 was all about how to introduce blended learning activities, so different styles of teaching. And then day 4 was really teaching them how to mark essays and to look at assessment, because as I say, you know, the students don't write essays or weren't writing essays at that point. So we actually had to teach the educators how to mark an essay as well. So this was our second trip round, and this was just a briefing meeting the day before. This was Sunday afternoon of the second time, and that's myself and Maria. And you can see the same team again from Aitken were helping to facilitate this with us. So the first day then, okay, was all about module planning. Okay, so as I say, we were looking at introducing modules to them. So what we did, we put everybody in groups, and they stayed in their groups all week. And so we put them into a module team. And we had the curriculum, and they all had copies of sort of like the written curriculum and all the different modules that, you know, were in year 1. And we gave them each a module. We gave them a theory module, and the idea was by the end of the week that they were going to be able to sort of plan how to implement that particular module. So they had to pick a module lead. They had to think about what members of the team would be doing in their different sort of roles and responsibilities. And they had to look at what the content was and think about how they were going to map that content and how they were going to sort of deliver that module. We had to get them to think about assessment, and we had to think about as well, you know, was the assessment right for the module? Was it constructively aligned? Would the assessment meet the learning objectives for that module? So all these new concepts that we were bringing into them to try and help them develop. And also, you know, they had to produce a module handbook as well. So, you know, there were lots of us going around and facilitating lots of presentations. They all had flip charts, post-it notes and everything. And, you know, and they all took times to sort of present back for their findings. The second day was about timetabling. So now again, they had the same module, but now what we wanted them to do was to produce a 6-week timetable for that particular module, and to think about the different teaching methods that they were going to do and how we were going to link that content to the student learning, really. So again, a full day on sort of how to prepare and to sort of plan timetabling. always a little bit of social in between as well. And we were lucky when we were there. So Mrs. Giumiani, who's in the middle here, it was her birthday on this particular day. So we had a little celebration for her at lunchtime, you know, and she, as I say, such an inspirational lady. So, you know, it was very, very hard work. The modules, the workshops ran from like 8 till 5. So very, very long days. And obviously, you know, we spent time in the evening sort of reflecting on what we'd done and then prepping the next day. But we were very, very well looked after as well, you know, and this was just one example where, you know, they of their hospitality, they were so, so generous and really, really looked after us. So we ate an awful lot of lovely food while we were over in Indonesia. So day 3 then, so again, another full day. So now we're working on, so we'd planned the module, we'd gotten to timetable. So now what we were thinking about is different ways of teaching, different teaching methods. So we were trying to introduce them to different types of teaching. So again, traditionally, they've done a lot of behaviourist sort of teaching where, you know, there might have been in the form of like a lecture where, you know, the educator stood and sort of talked at the students. So we were trying to bring in different ways of teaching. So some lectures, seminars, you know, much more student involvement, workshops. We also were introducing them to the concept of doing sort of online learning as well. So whereby, you know, they could sort of access lots of online resources. So this was something that we were sort of involved in sort of sharing some of the resources that we'd worked on at Nottingham and showing them really just how, you know, that could sort of really enhance the student experience as well. So we sort of shared examples of what we'd done, and again, we're just getting them to sort of think about different ways and innovative ways of teaching. Day 4 was about blended learning. So blended learning is very much, again, where, you know, the students are encouraged to do some learning before they come to the session. Again, that might be by looking at an online resource or going through, you know, different resources to prepare them for a session, and then actually coming into class and then discussing that sort of session and then sort of moving on from that and sort of further sort of developing that particular concept of the session. So we then shared examples of our blended learning resources, you know, and our program at the minute has everything has blended learning attached to it. So we have an incredible bank of online resources that us as staff have devised, okay, and a lot of these are now open and available to share on open access. So if you go through the open access YouTube channel, you'll be able to see all of the resources that the University of Nottingham have, and there are lots of stuff on there on YouTube, on the YouTube channel of all our team really, that we've done these resources. So we shared them with the Indonesian midwives as well, you know, and they were quite blown away at some of the stuff that we did and that was available to our students. So, you know, it was just another thing to sort of think about that they probably hadn't done at that sort of point. And we were talking about how we could introduce that blended learning package into a module and how to you know, to make that work. And then the final day of the assessment then of the workshops was on assessment. So this was really getting them to think about sort of assessments and how to define that and what its purpose was in education. And also then to sort of highlight the different assessment strategies that were within this professional midwifery programme, and also to look at criteria, marking criteria, so that they were able to sort of look at how that works and how that sort of influences assessment then. So what we did was we took out some student work and we gave them some reflective essays to look at. And again, you know, reflection was a new concept. So we were giving them a selection of different essays and we asked them to mark them. So we gave them the grading criteria and we asked them to mark the essays, and then, you know, got them to sort of share what they thought afterwards then. So, you know, it was a really good sort of exercise. And both Maria and I did sort of sessions as well interspersed with these workshops. So I did them a session on reflection, and Maria, she has just completed her doctorate, and her doctorate was all about sort of compassion in midwifery practice. And, you know, the values of compassion are very much integrated in our midwifery program. And Maria did a lovely session on all about sort of compassion, you know, how if we can't be compassionate to ourselves and as an education team, how can we then sort of inspire students to go on and be compassionate to women? So there's a big sort of focus on that aspect as well then. So that was sort of the focus of the workshops. And as I say, in between these, we were well looked after. And sometimes it didn't always go to plan because we had a schedule to stick to. But some afternoons they might say to us, "Can you change tomorrow?" And we'd already done all the planning for this. So we had to be sort of quite adaptable sometimes. So it did involve Maria and I sort of working quite late sometimes into the evenings just to sort of prep for the next day, and again sort of reflecting on what we'd done. So thinking about future initiatives then, okay, so at the time we went out to sort of help them to implement the first year of the programme, and there was talk at the time as to whether or not we might have gone out again at some point to develop sort of years 2 and 3, and then of course obviously the whole world stopped with COVID and the pandemic. But what is really, really exciting now is that there are future initiatives, and actually because of the collaboration that we'd done with midwifery, and those great steps that they had taken, really, midwifery actually was really sort of leading really with the university, and there's now a further collaboration which is going to be taking place. My colleague Louise is actually going back out to Indonesia in a couple of weeks' time, but this time she's going with people from different faculties at Nottingham as well. Nottingham has a huge global profile, but we've got sort of faculties such as engineering going out, and that really sort of raises the sort of game, but it puts midwifery on the map actually, because we've already done some pioneering work to influence sort of education in Indonesia already. So it's really now quite inspiring that the other parts of the university are getting involved in going out to do sort of initiatives in Indonesia as well. One of the things that Louise now is going out to do is actually to collaborate with the same team on introducing a master's program in Indonesia as well. So that's where we're at with that. So it's been a wonderful experience to be involved in, and an opportunity that I wouldn't have had in clinical practice. This is something that midwifery education has allowed me to do, and never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd get an opportunity to go twice to Indonesia and just to experience that wonderful experience that we had out there. So that is my presentation. So thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.